This is a podcast or something like that. Hey, what is up? I was just thinking about something interesting right as I was about to start. I was just looking at my YouTube analytics as I do, every few months. Definitely not multiple times a day, So really, yeah, every few months or years, I'll look at my YouTube studio analytics. And I was looking at them and I was thinking, okay, so for last month, I averaged 1,000 views a day. I got about 31,000 views on my channel in the past 28 days. So, okay, a little bit more than 1,000 views a day. And average watch time is at least a few minutes, These Better Call Saul videos have average watch time of like 18 minutes, which is marvelous. But let's just say it's 5 or 10 minutes. If we take into account other videos, even though the majority of the views are Better Call Saul videos by an enormous margin, over 90%, I would guess. Yeah. My top 9 videos in the last month, yeah. The most viewed video is the 10th video. That's not a Better Call Saul video, and that is the Willoughby's video. Got 423 views in the last, so a little over 10 views a day for a non-Better Call Saul video. But yeah, okay. So 1,000 views a day, about average watch time. Whatever. We could say 5 or 10 minutes. I do have here 10,000 hours is the average watch time. So 30,000 views, 10,000 hours is the total watch time. Anyways, what I was trying to think about is like, okay, so that's a lot of people. It's just unbelievable to think about that many people listening to my voice. It's much more normal to do something like this Verbal Journal podcast. Hello and welcome to the Verbal Journal podcast. That was a 2-minute intro. Much more normal to do something like this that has no audience. That's more sort of relatable. So, but yeah, I was just thinking as I started, it's like, okay, so that's I've been trying to tackle this question of like, how does art sort of intersect with content? And I've been sort of tackling it from, for a few podcasts. And I've just like enjoyed thinking about it, even though maybe it's just a silly question to concern yourself with. But it is interesting, like, as someone who's, been happy to consider myself an artist for my whole adult life. And since I was like 15 or 14 or something, And like, it's not like, oh, if you don't consider me an artist, like my identity is destroyed. But it's like, yeah, I at the end of the day, sure, I consider myself an artist. And like, I remember a time when I was like, oh, I would never want to be a content creator. Like, I don't want to make content. Like, years ago, just when I learned the word content, it's like, it's just an ugly sounding word. But then at the end of the day, I came around to like, but I mean, content is just another way of looking at art. It's just like, art when it's marketed, I guess. Like, what's the difference? Like, isn't of a, fucking amazing painting by Max Ernst, like, also content when someone buys it and puts it on their wall? Like, yeah, I mean, the purchase and sale, I guess with content, it's like content creation, you are so involved in the purchase and sale of your labor, your artistic labor. So like, yeah, you're just very involved in it, I guess, or you tend to be. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I was just thinking as I started the podcast, like, it's so wild to have so many people experiencing my writing and my voice, and to have that be through this specific medium of talking about a show I really like. It's just so interesting that that's the way my voice has gotten heard by so many people, by like 1,000 like 1,000 people a day, basically, for minutes on end listening to my voice. And like, what is it that makes that content rather than art? And why should that even matter? It's not like the person watching is thinking about the ad revenue I'm getting. Like, it's not even like ad revenue is a big part of my income. If anything, I want to connect with the people watching, obviously, and inspire interesting thoughts. I love getting comments where people are like, "Oh, this helped me think about like my real life relationships." This is such a weird way to start the podcast. Why did I choose to do it this way? I've just been thinking a lot about this stuff lately because I've been so much more kind of generally motivated to make stuff. And it's just, I've also been just doing better in my life in general on like a lot of different fronts. So I don't know. I'm just like thinking about how much I love art and thinking about how to bring it more into what I do. And then just, yeah, on this last podcast episode 2 weeks ago, we skipped last week, of course. I was visiting with family and had a good time visiting with family. I've been very busy and productive in the last 2 weeks. I've made enormous progress on the Breaking Bad video. I've recorded the whole script. And I've edited the audio of me reading it, so that's a lot. Recording it took like 6 hours in the booth. And then, ended up with a lot of footage, a lot of audio recording, like 4.5 hours, 5 hours of recording. And then I edited that down to 2.5 hours, and editing that took 10 or 15 hours. It's the longest editing job I've ever done for audio. Just because it was so much material. I'm cutting out all the bad takes, all the this and that. And now I've been grabbing all the footage for the last few days. I've been grabbing all the clips, grabbing all the clips from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and some screen grabs when I need them. Some screen grabs of my YouTube channel. The whole thing is screen grabs. But yeah, sometimes I'll get screen grabs of my YouTube channel or something else if I talk about something else. But yeah, there's, literally just so many clips. Like, because it's not just the clips that I play with audio, it's just like whenever I'm talking about something, I've sort of learned and developed the technique of not even needing a background, Like, I used a background in like the first 5 or so Better Call Saul videos. And then I've actually figured out how not to, but it just means such a long process of grabbing and editing footage. And it's worth it, and I like it, and it's no big deal. And I do it while I'm watching a, NBA playoff game or a baseball game or, and I'm listening to a podcast. I'm chilling. It's all good. But it's been a lot of work and it's been fun. And that's just in addition to working more at my job than I've done in years. So I've been seeing more clients, 15 to 20 people a week, and really doing a lot. So that's been really good. And stuff's been good overall. Got a new pair of shoes, Hoka's. They have really good support, so they're good for your body, good for your physiology. So today's Sunday, and it's about 1 p.m. The baseball games are starting. I am in a fantasy league, and today is the last day of the second matchup, and I am 2 points ahead of the person I'm matched up against. So many things could go wrong today with all the players. Like, it's going to be so interesting to see. Like, you might think fantasy sports is kind of stupid, but if you like a sport, it's fun. Like, and the people you're doing the fantasy league with, it's just a fun thing to add to your life where, like, when the real players perform well, if you're already going to be watching games, it's fun to have your own little fantasy team where, like, you get to, choose and trade and add and drop players, and then you're trying to get the best combination of players. So I added a bunch of players today. It's really risky. I added a bunch of pitchers. I added 2 pitchers who are starting games today who were just not drafted or, on any team in the league. And they could throw a really bad game. If they give up a lot of runs, they could get negative points, and they could harm me. I could literally lose because of this decision. But I made some other decisions. I moved things around. It's going to be very interesting. What else is going on? Today was Game 6 of the World Chess Championship, and Ding Liren won as white against Jan Nepomniachtchi as black. They keep going back and forth and trading wins as white. And they're both playing outstanding offense, a little bit, lacking on the defense. But, hey, it's the hardest game, so. And they're both incredibly strong opponents. Ding found some fantastic moves today. Nepo was hard on himself, but, I don't know. He mostly, I don't know. I guess he did make some blunders, but it wasn't like a few days ago where it was a one move blunder. So I don't see why he should be as mad at himself. But it was Ding found it's the first time the London Opening has been played in a winning game. Has been played for a win in a World Chess Championship. London is, I believe, D4, and then what is it? Is it Knight F3 or something? I don't know. Just very normal, basic opening. But Ding really spiced it up. Spiced it up a lot. Threw a C3 in there. Okay, so, but that's cool. Ding is also really funny and cute, and everybody's falling in love with him. And even the other day, Nepo said he missed him after a rest day. In the press conference, they asked him some question that didn't even ask about this, and something about Ding, and he was like, "Oh yeah, after a rest day, I missed him a little bit." And they were like, "You missed him?" And he's like, "A little bit." But Nepo made this kind of insulting comment about Magnus, just calling him a streamer the other day. I think he misunderstood something they were telling him about Magnus's post online. He thought it was, I don't know if he misunderstood and thought it was an insult, which it wasn't. Magnus just posted Astana calling because they're playing in I think Astana, Kazakhstan, if I'm saying that correctly. But I don't believe that was an insult to Nepomniachtchi. Anyways, Jan Nepomniachtchi called him a streamer. But today, Ding said something very complimentary about Magnus. So there are all these decisive games in the World Chess Championship, and because everyone who likes chess is fucking neurotic, like me, but in more annoying ways sometimes. People are always complaining about shit, or always have to take issue with something, and it's either there's too many draws, which it's there's always a lot of draws in high level chess, a lot of tied games, because you can play chess such that you don't take risks, and in the World Chess Championship, losing a game is a huge deal because then you have a lot of pressure on you. You have to win, and it's hard because draws are so possible. So anyway, so people will play risk-averse chess being, all these different ways that designed to more likely get a draw than a loss, but also decrease the chances of a win. But anyway, so there's been more decisive games in this World Chess Championship. Fabiano Magnus back in 2019 or whatever, they played 12 games without a decisive game. Wait, no, I'm sorry. They both had a decisive game. I'm sorry. Hold on. I always get this wrong. Yeah, I always get this wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. And it was not 2019. It was 2021. It was 2021. No, that was Nepo. It was 2018. Wow, my bad. Went the wrong direction. Yeah, okay, so, no, there was no decisive games. Yeah, it was 12. Of course I knew that. Why did I think I was wrong about that? Yeah, it was 12 drawn games. And then Magnus won both the tiebreak games. And then the third tiebreak game? What? I don't remember how they did that. But anyways, so today, because they have all these decisive games, they've already had 4 or 5 decisive games. How many decisive games have they had so far? Let's double check that before I give out misinformation. Wow, Lichess makes it a little annoying to look. World Chess official website. And, okay, results. Wait, the world, I'm not even joking. Oh, it actually, the page didn't show up at first and then it worked. Okay, there's been 6 games and 4 have been decisive. Okay, of course, it has to be an even number. Yeah, because they're tied 3-3. So 4 games have been decisive. 3 in a row now have been decisive. And today they asked Ding why. They asked Nepo first, and he said, I'll ask me that in the future. He just didn't want to answer because it's a fucking annoying question, okay? Because when okay. So the context is Magnus isn't playing in the World Championship. The World Champion abdicated the throne, decided he no longer wanted to be World Champion because it required these grueling, now 14 game matches, every 2 years where you have to be training for like at least 6 months. It's an extremely grueling experience, so he didn't want to do it. And, but everybody's asking why, there's so many decisive games, implying because it's not as good chess, it's not as high level chess, and Magnus isn't involved, and we're getting a worse experience because the world champ is not here. Okay, so Ding, this cutie pie who's so lovable, who everyone's falling in love with, and I've been on the Ding train, since at least 2018, since I started like following chess. But he has never done anything slightly unlovable. He's always been a sweetheart. And this is how he responded when they asked him this. I can play the clip on the pod.
What about you, Ding?
I guess the reason is maybe we are not that professional than Magnus.
You're very honest. We appreciate that.
He gets a good laugh, and I swear, if you're a fan of chess, look up this clip, because his smile, it's the most fucking, he's just made himself crack up, and it is so delightful. And he's hilarious because he's saying, yeah, maybe we're not as professional as Magnus. I don't think he's being snarky, but if I said it, which maybe I would in his position, I don't think I would have the guts to say it in his position. But if I did, it would definitely be in a snarky way, like, is that what you're implying? But he's just like, I don't know, maybe we're not as professional as Magnus. So chess is exciting. The NBA playoffs is going on. Golden State Warriors lost the first game yesterday against the Kings at home for the Kings. It's the first time they've been in the playoffs. First time they've won a playoff game at home in, I think, like 15 years or something. So very good for them. Warriors are probably going to come back with a vengeance, but I follow the Warriors a lot. That's why I'm mentioning them. But yeah, I've been enjoying watching the NBA games generally. Okay, so verbal journal. So let's start by checking the verbal journal mailbag. We like to do that sometimes. So you can email into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com. And today we do not have any emails, so that's good. That segment is usually pretty short. We have another segment. But yeah, feel free to email in if you listen and you want to, talk or whatever. Okay, this next segment is my weekly report my phone gives me of how I'm using it and how many hours I'm using it. So in this past week, I used my phone an hour and 17 minutes every day on average, which is 44 minutes, like more than double last week's daily average. That's wild. Wow. Lichess I used for 2 hours and 20 minutes this past week. I use Google Chrome a lot. I don't know why. Sometimes I go on Twitter on my phone because I don't have the app. I'll go on Twitter on the Chrome on my phone. Then I use the Messages app. Okay, well, that's very, very interesting. That's a fascinating segment. There's a huge fan base for that segment where I look at my weekly phone use report and usually have no comment. So cool. Okay, well, great. But yeah, so things are going good. Actually, traffic on the YouTube channel has been picking up because I assume because people are excited for Better Call Saul season 6 coming out on Netflix this coming week, like in 2 days. I assume that's the reason. But yeah, the views have gone up a lot. They've like doubled from 1,000 a day to like, or no, they've gone from like 800 a day to like 1,600 a day. So they've like pretty much doubled. And yeah, it's good to see more people watching the vids. I mean, it's almost all Better Call Saul videos, like, 20 a day for the Willoughbys, 5 a day for the My Little Pony, 5 a day for Animal Collective, 5 a day for the School of Life videos, 2 or 3 a day for Lauren Southern, 1 or 2 for Nietzsche, PragerU, Michael Scott, Little Dizzle. It's like, it's interesting. It's just interesting what a YouTube channel is like and how you get viewers, and people are just like, I guess people just love watching video essays about Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, and YouTube like sort of nourishes this, and really like YouTube like like, do people love it, or does YouTube love it, or is it both? Or anyways, I've really enjoyed doing it. New Danny Gonzalez video. He's funny. He makes me laugh sometimes. He's an artist, right? Or a content creator. What's the difference? New Jack Saint video. New Lil Bill video. There's a lot of new stuff going on. I got a lot of good video makers in my subscriptions. A lot of good people expressing themselves via the medium of video. It's really just, there's so many possibilities, There's so many things you can do. You can pretty much say or do whatever you want. I mean, it's endless possibilities. There are a lot of limitations, but we won't go into that, There's like, obviously, YouTube can be a pain, but that's not really what I mean. I just mean in general, like, you could make a video about anything. Like, if you think about it, like, one of my weirdest videos is my dialectics video, because I like spend an enormous amount of time doing research and also like did not do a good enough job and knew it. Like, there's just, I was just like, I'm not gonna actually make like a scholarly work on dialectics. Like, I'm not even reading like any Hegel, and I'm not doing a ton of like, I did a lot of reading compared to YouTube video makers, but I didn't do a lot of reading compared to scholars, and I didn't want to, you know what I mean? So like, I didn't make a YouTube channel to like force myself to do stuff that I don't want to do. So it's just interesting to make a video like that, where it's like, like, it takes the form of like, here, I'm going to explain this scholarly subject to you, but it always sort of comes up short, or does it in my own sort of tweaked, subjective way. It's always sort of twisted in my own way, which I guess everything, even if it was a scholarly work, it would be sort of twisted to my own bias. But I don't know. I guess I use this podcast as verbal journal space, like, nowadays, to just try to understand like what it is I'm doing with content making. Because, yeah, I mean, you are making content. I went through my videos last week and I said like very few of them, it even like makes sense to look at as works of art. I mean, that was sort of how I felt about it. In the sense that like, they're art because, yes, I'm using writing and video making, but I guess I just am trying to dig into like, there's something artistic about it all the time, but there's also a lot of other purposes, and it's interesting to tease them apart and think of like which purposes for these videos make videos I'm most proud of and interested in sort of continuing. I'm proud of like all my videos, I guess, but it's a question of like, what do I want to do more of when I finish this Breaking Bad video? And I talked last time on the podcast 2 weeks ago about So I was going through my videos and I was saying how they're like didactic in a way, and that's why they feel not artistic. Like didactic being like when you're teaching or explaining something like educational. And it's like I don't go about my videos like wanting to teach, but it's undoubtable like they are like, hey, even like forget the dialectics one, like anything, you know, even The Onion and mental health, it's like I'm still going into certain like didactic concepts, but I'm also just having a laugh with that one. That one's more of like I'm just like reacting to funny things. But it's always like react to funny things and do some didactic stuff, like in the school life video or videos. But and like Better Call Saul, you could even on some level say it's like react to funny things and say didactic stuff. It basically is like just react to like beautiful things and then say hopefully somewhat interesting things. But it's like not it's like didactic, but it's also it is. You know, I have a whole playlist on my channel just called like homage or homage. I don't know how you say that, but. And that's in a sense like that's what this whole Better Call Saul series is for sure too. It's like just react to beautiful things I love, and I don't really go about it with a didactic goal. Like I really don't. Like I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna use like in this Breaking Bad one, you'll see when it comes out, like I talk about sublimation a little bit, but I didn't like read articles about sublimation. Like I don't even give like a good. Like I give like a good understanding if you didn't know anything about it, I think, but it's not, it's like something that I bring into the conversation to accentuate a point and to talk about something. And I actually did have ideas of going further into that and talking about how like Walter is almost like sublimating in the opposite way we would normally think by doing like socially taboo and not okay things with his energy instead of the other way around, using taboo energy to do socially constructive things. But that I sort of like, anyways, you'll see in the video, I disregard sort of that like strict specific understanding of sublimation anyways as related to social acceptability. This is going to make no sense if you haven't seen the video yet. Anyways, it's not important or interesting, but the point is I talk about something like sublimation. There's certainly a didactic paragraph or so, but it's like not even citing anything, you know. Or you could look at the nature versus nurture video where I do go into like extensive citations about electromagnetic hypersensitivity. But like, I guess what I'm trying to sort of explain in this whole stuff is like in this whole podcast and last episode is like something like that. And I don't know why I'm explaining this. I'm explaining it to myself to just try to explore, but like I went into ridiculous detail about the research on electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And I don't do that thinking, oh, it'll be so cool that I'll inform people about electromagnetic hypersensitivity. Not even like the more real point of like, oh, I'll inform people about the way we misunderstand the line between physical and mental health. Like I do care about that. But I feel like even more important to me is like, I don't think anyone has done this. I think this is worth doing. I guess I'm just rephrasing it. But it's like, I want to do this because for the sake of doing it, it seems like it's worth doing just for the sake of doing it. And I mean, the fact that people will like, I want to do my best at it so people hopefully can have the most powerful experience of me like breaking apart an issue in the best way I can. But whether people, come around to my view on that issue is not a big concern. Maybe it's just something about how I view it, like with the, video where I'm psychoanalyzing Trump's response to the COVID, his like press conferences. Like, that's a great example. And I said that was one of my only like artistic, one of the only videos that like felt artistic when I just thought about it. And that's because of a lot of the visual stuff I put into it, but also because of just the way it came from. I literally was just watching the press conferences, taking notes because I didn't know what else to do. I was not planning for a video. I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time. I didn't, because it was in March 2020. I was watching the press conferences, taking notes, and was like, I need to just keep writing down what's happening. This is absurd. So something about doing things for the sake of just doing them is part of what is artistic to me. But anyways, let me get on to what I was going to say. So I was talking about art as non-didactic, okay? And like with, which were my most artistic videos and stuff. And like, yeah, because when I'm talking about Trump in that video, like, I don't care if people watching or like come away from it, feeling the way I do about Trump's response to the COVID pandemic. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's not a strong point to say I don't care about it, because it's like, obviously I don't care about it, I guess. But like, I mean, that would be nice and stuff, but I guess it's not even like I don't know. That one's an interesting one too, because it's almost like journalism in a sense, but it's like this wild distortion of like gonzo journalism, where it's like just like methodological and like laser focused, single-minded, like stay at home gonzo journalism for the pandemic era. Anyways, okay, so I said two of my videos felt the most artistic. It was the psychoanalyzing Trump's COVID press conferences and the Organs of Sense, I believe, the one I did about the book, The Organs of Sense, where I interviewed the author, Adam Ehrlich Sachs, and I just spent like over a year reading that book twice, taking all these kinds of notes. On a certain level, I don't really see what the difference is between that and my Better Call Saul videos, besides the fact that I was on camera and I'm talking about a book rather than a show. So like when I do these Better Call Saul, like there's a piece of it where I try not to, but there's a piece of it where sometimes it is just like, yeah, this is cool, I like this show. But I think any of that comes into it makes it less artistic. Just like any sort of direct didacticism makes it less artistic. This is just my opinion. If I come in and I'm like, hey, like the EHS explanation stuff could easily be seen as like absurdly not artistic. And that would be fine if people see it that way. Of course, I whatever. It's like, why did you go on for 20 minutes about EHS? But to me, that's the beauty of it. That's what makes that video so special. It has 180,000 views, that video. It's an hour-long video. The thumbnail has Chuck and Jimmy is mid-word calling Howard a pig fucker. So very proud of that video. Very proud of going into all that detail, because it's just, I spent hours reading research and writing up those, paragraphs and pages. And it's just really special. Like, there's got to be people who have gone into some detail, but that's got to be the most detail anyone's gone into about EHS on YouTube. I could be wrong, but that's the type of thing that makes me really proud of what I've been doing here. Covering the Immaculate Conception of Little Dizzle, just making that video. Like the fact that I made a video about that movie. That's amazing. I gave an hour to this movie that I love. So it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but anyways, it's not just about whether they're not didactic, It's also about like, am I doing things that are original, like going into that much detail about EHS, or like, documenting Trump's press conferences like word by word in a ridiculous way. Like, do I just have something unique going on? I think that's part of what makes it art, as I've been sort of thinking about this more to myself and just exploring what I mean by wanting to do things in a more in line more with my sort of artistic aesthetic sense of myself. So actually, in these last 2 weeks, I I was visiting a family member who's moving and who had some of my old stuff, and so I was going through some of my old stuff to take from them so they can move, not have to have my old stuff with them. And I was going through a bunch of art that I made during college and after college as well, but mostly during college. Just like hundreds of paintings and drawings and other things, and just like, it's so interesting how looking at them, like I had a throw out and keep pile, and like it would just be like almost instantaneous. You just look at a piece and you're like, okay, either something works about this and it's worth keeping, or literally nothing works. There's no redeeming qualities. I do not need this. It was, I guess I was learning something. So it was just interesting to go through. I got rid of a bunch, and nothing meaningful to me really, but I got rid of a bunch, and then I just kept so much. So now I have a lot of my old art, and and I've been making a lot of new art. I did a bunch of painting last night after many hours of gathering footage for the Breaking Bad video. I took a break by just relaxing, watching sports, and painting for a few hours. Been doing oil painting, so that's been a little messy but very fun, getting rich colors and textures. I have a lot of canvases I've been painting over, and just like old paintings, I was like, I don't really like this. I could paint over this. So that's been really good and uplifting and fulfilling. I think I talked about visiting a museum recently on 2 podcasts ago, probably, or maybe 1. And so stuff's been good. I've been chilling. What else is going on? So yeah, that's some more exploration of the sort of art in videos thing. But I think was the other one actually? So there was psychoanalyzing Trump's COVID press conferences. Was the other one I said is artistic, the organs of sense? I mean, I have 2 where I'm literally painting. So those have to be artistic, right? Wait, there's just 1 where I'm painting? Wait, did I hide the other one where I'm painting, but I still have... Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, I'm literally painting in those videos. How are those not artistic? Of course they are. I mean, they are. It's like the painting is sort of like the show or the book. But, I don't know. It's just like... It's just interesting. But, like, some of these video essays, like, just the fact that I'm using so much of like another source just makes it feel like the fact that I'm not doing that much originally, like I'm not creating the original thing. I don't know what I mean by doing that much originally. I'm not doing the thing originally. It just makes it a little bit different. But I mean, even if I do like a dialectics video, I'm not creating the concepts I'm talking about. If I do it, I mean, why are egotistical people so insecure? That's like a didactic video, right? But I'm doing it in my own personal style. It's just interesting. YouTube is just such a weird, interesting platform, and what it means to have a YouTube channel is interesting. Part of what I was thinking about is like, it feels more like content than art when people are like thinking about their audience in a certain way. I don't know if it's thinking about the audience more or thinking about the audience in a certain way. I think it's a certain way. When it's like how to make my audience as big as possible, that feels like content. But I mean, I guess artists have always made content. No? Maybe what is the difference between artists and content? I did find this one scientific paper as I was mulling this stuff over. I was trying to look up scientific papers that might have covered it. And there's this one paper on the differences between scientific and artistic approaches to qualitative research by Elliot W. Eisner at Stanford University in 1981. My intention in this paper is to identify 10 dimensions in which artistic and scientific approaches to qualitative research differ. The term qualitative research does not have a long history in the field of education, and in many ways it not only hides the important distinctions which need to be made, but it is itself misleading. The major distinction we seek is not between qualitative and non-qualitative forms of research, since all empirical research must of necessity pay attention to qualities, but between what is studied in a scientific mode and what is studied artistically. There can be no empirical research that form that form of research that addresses problems in a material universe that does not aim to describe, interpret, predict, or control qualities. The major distinction to be made in the conduct of research is not located in the phenomenon of study, but in the mode in which that study occurs. That's interesting. That makes sense. The difference that counts is between what is studied artistically and what is studied scientifically. These differences are the ones to which this paper is addressed, but I've never heard of this type of idea. Studying things artistically. At the outset, it should be said that research flying under the flag of science is extremely wide. Indeed, it is so wide that some philosophers of science regard no form of research in the social sciences as scientific. For philosophers of science such as Nagel, 1961, or Popper, 1959, the so-called social sciences are not yet what they claim to be. We need not, and I do not embrace the strict conception of science that they advocate. I am willing to regard as scientific inquiries ranging from the testing of formal mathematical models of learning through controlled laboratory experiments to the kind of studies done in the field of cultural anthropology by people like Redfield, 1941. Of course, we all remember Redfield's famous study in 1941. For the purposes of this paper, and I added that, it doesn't say that. For the purposes of this paper, scientific research may be regarded as inquiries that use formal instruments as the primary basis of data collection, that transform the data collected into numerical indices of one kind or another, and that attempt to generalize in a formal way to some universe beyond itself. So when I'm making videos, am I using formal instruments as the primary basis for data collection? I mean, yeah, I'm taking notes on the videos. Is that formal instruments? I don't know. Maybe that's informal. That transform the data collected into numerical indices. Well, it's not purely numerical. No, Although I recognize that there are forms of scientific research that differ from the characteristics I've just described, I believe that these characteristics are by far the most salient ones and hence should be regarded as modal characteristics. As for the concept artistic, it similarly has no single simple definition. Art and artistic are terms that have been the subject of aesthetic debate and analysis for over 2,000 years. Plato, for example, viewed art as the creation of harmonious form whose mathematical relationships participated in the true, the good, and the beautiful. Aristotle regarded art as the production of mimesis. Of course. Clive Bell as the presence in a work of significant form. Suzanne Langer as the creation of a non-discursive symbol expressive of human feeling. Yeah, that's good. Non-discursive, is that the same as informal sort of? Non-discursive, so you're not using language or concepts. It's sort of like non-didactic and how I've been talking about didactic. So non-discursive, well, it doesn't mean you have to not be using language, right? What is non-discursive? Because you could be writing. Of course, writing can be art. Non-discursive, not relating to language or discourse. Maybe they mean discourse more than language. Non-discursive symbol expressive of human feeling. So animals can't make art. John Dewey as coherent and emotionally moving experience. Okay, that seems kind of... So it's about it being an experience. Coherent and emotionally moving experience. It's about it being an experience rather than like a creation. The point here is simply that neither the concept of science nor the concept of art are settled issues among those who have thought about them most deeply. I provide this caveat now because my remarks will of necessity be based on an arbitrary, but I hope not an unreasonable, conception of both art and science. To provide a philosophically adequate discussion of these concepts would exceed my competence and would, at the very least, require a manuscript of book length. Following is a discussion of 10 dimensions in which scientific and artistic approaches to research differ. First, the forms of representation employed. One significant difference between research participating in a scientific mode and that participating in an artistic mode is the kind of form that each uses to represent what has been learned. Scientific work, of necessity, employs formal statements which express either empirically referenced quantitative relationships or communicate through discursive propositions. The language which is used is formal in the sense that it is literal. That is, the syntactical rules to which such statements abide allow little or no scope for the poetic or the metaphorical. Okay. So that helps me understand. Yeah, but I certainly don't try to write in that way when I'm writing videos. I mean, I guess I weave in and out of it where I'm like describing just like factual things and then I'm sort of speaking more metaphorically or figuratively. This is not to say that the poetic and the metaphorical do not find their way into scientific research. They do in a multitude of covert ways. House, 1979, provides some illuminating examples of how this occurs. It is to say that the meanings conveyed aspire to literal rather than figurative form. Okay. So they use analogies to convey literal meaning rather than let's just see what they say. Perhaps a classic example of such work is to be found in Birdwhistle's microanalytic schemes for the recording and scoring of human gesture, posture, and movement. His aim is to operationalize both the perception and recording of human behavior through codification. Once codified, the methods of data collection and analysis can be routinized and the results objectified. Artistic forms of does that mean they can be objective or just more objective? Artistic forms of representation have no comparable codifications. They place a premium on the idiosyncratic use of form, visual and auditory form, as well as discursive form. Yeah, I mean, I was talking about the idiosyncratic form of going into so much depth about EHS. That's an idiosyncratic use of discursive form, I would assume. Okay, to convey in non-literal as well as in literal ways the meanings of the investigator wishes to express. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a brilliant example of how visual, musical, and verbal forms can be combined to convey significant insights into human and inhuman relationships. For the artistic, the literal is frequently pale and humdrum. What one seeks is not the creation of a code that abides to publicly codified rules, but the creation of an evocative form whose meaning is embodied in the shape of what is expressed. Okay. I feel like that's not a helpful way to put it, but they're saying, okay, it's not a reference to publicly codified forms. Well, it is a reference, but it doesn't abide to it. It's sort of a unique amalgamation in some sense. Like what makes like an article in the New York Times art or not art? Like surely like the article detailing that Donald Trump was arrested or whatever, is that art? I mean, I want to say no. I mean, it's like, it doesn't seem to me like newspaper articles about news are art. That's not how I think of art. But they are writing, obviously. But I mean, a lot of things are writing, but not art. I do a clinical note after each therapy appointment. That's not fucking art. That's the perfect example of what is not art, because I'm trying my best to be objective. I mean, every single word, every line, I actually write it in the third person. You know, I say client and clinician. So, you know, that's the sort of extreme of objective writing and not art. And then art, I guess, is just sort of creates its own rules in a lot of ways, or plays with its own forms. Okay, number 2, the criteria for appraisal. Scientific approaches to research ask whether or not the conclusions are supported by the evidence, and further whether the methods that were used to collect the evidence did not bias the conclusions. In other words, scientific research is always concerned with questions of validity. For a research study to be judged valid, a variety of criteria needs to be applied to it. A variety of criteria need to be applied to it, because criteria is plural. I'm so sorry I messed that up. These range from appraising the character of sampling procedures and the magnitude of instrument reliability to the less tangible areas of interpretation. In artistic approaches to research, the canons of test reliability and sampling do not apply. While one might question a writer's or a film producer's reliability, there's no formalized set of procedures to measure writer reliability. One doesn't really want the mean view of 4 writers' observations about the mental hospital in Oregon, which served as a subject matter for Ken Kesey's play. That is such a good sentence. Yeah, this article slaps. One doesn't really want the mean view of 4 writers' observations about the mental hospital in Oregon, which served as the subject matter for Ken Kesey's play. That is so funny. One simply wants Ken Kesey's view. Its validity, if that is the appropriate term, is to be determined by our view of its credibility and not by reducing his work to some average by using only that portion that it shares with the views of others. This is a fascinating article. Validity in the arts is the product of the persuasiveness of a personal vision. Its utility is determined by the extent to which it informs. There is no test of statistical significance, no measure of construct validity in artistically rendered research. What one seeks is illumination and penetration. The proof of the pudding is the way in which it shapes our conception of the world or some aspect of it. Number 3, point of focus. Scientific approaches to research tend to focus on the manifest behavior of the individual or group studied to a greater degree than artistic approaches. By this I mean that manifest behavior provides the primary data for research in the social sciences in which scientifically oriented research participates. What one attends to is what people do, how they behave, what they say. Such phenomena are open to experience, they are observable, their incidents can be counted, and once counted, they can be treated in a multitude of ways. Although one might make inferences from the behavior one observes and records, the farther the inference is from the behavior, the less trustworthy it is regarded to be. The distinction between high inference and low inference conclusions underscores this point. Artistic approaches to research focus less on behavior than on the experience the individuals are having and the meaning their actions have for others. Interesting. So the point of focus is less the behavior and more the experience. So less the external behavior and more the internal behavior. I guess that means the more I speculate and make speculative conclusions about Better Call Saul, the more artistic my video is. Just how does one focus on experience and meaning? How does one make sense of what is non-observable? One way is to make inferences from observables to what is not observable. Manifest behavior is treated primarily as a cue, a springboard to get someplace else. The other way is to indwell, to empathize, that is, to imaginatively participate in the experience of another. For a vivid example of indwelling as a technique for describing the experience of others, see Barone, 1978. The difference between the two is subtle but important. In the former, observables are used in a kind of statistical fashion. One intuitively or statistically estimates the probability that this behavior means one particular thing or another. There is no real need for empathy. The latter banks on the observer's ability to imaginatively project himself into the life of another in order to know what that person is experiencing. It is the content provided by this form of knowing that serves as a major source of understanding for artistic approaches to research. Thus, a major focus in artistic approaches to research is the meanings and experiences of the people who function in the cultural web one studies. As Geertz, 1973, puts it with respect to his work, Believing, with Max Weber, that man is an animal suspended in webs of significance he himself has spun. I got confused. As Geertz puts it with respect to his work, quote, Believing, with Max Weber, that man is an animal suspended in webs of significance he himself has spun, I take culture to be those webs, and the analysis of it to be, therefore, not an experimental science in search of law, but an interpretive one in search of meaning. Okay. I don't really need that. I feel like these points kind of dip out towards the end. Number 4, the nature of generalization. In the social sciences, the methodology required for generalizing from a set of specific findings to a universe is well defined. In this process, the selection of a sample must be random and the parameters of the universe clearly articulated. Inferences from sample to population are acceptable only insofar as they meet these requirements. There is comparatively little interest in findings that deal only with the sample itself. Social science research methods are after bigger fish. This orientation to generalization, one which is statistical in nature, is what Windelband has called nomothetic. Studies of single cases or the examination of the idiosyncratic are not considered good resources for generalizing. Indeed, in statistical studies, outliers, individual scores that do not conform to the distribution of a sample or population, are often disregarded. They are considered part of the error variance. Ooh, burn. What one seeks are trends, robust central tendencies, or stable and statistically significant differences in the variances between groups as a function of treatment. Research in the social sciences attempts to move from the particular to the general and is interested in particulars only insofar as they represent the general. Random selection is the cornerstone of the process. Artistic approaches to research have no comparable mechanism for generalization, but this should not be interpreted to mean that generalization is not possible. While it is sometimes said that idiographic research does not generalize, I think such conclusion is incorrect. But if so, then how does one generalize from a non-randomly selected single case? Generalization is possible because of the belief that the general resides in the particular, and because what one learns from a particular, one applies to other situations subsequently encountered. Consider literature as an example. Is it the case that Saul Bellows' novel Mr. Samler's Planet is simply a story about Arthur Samler and no one else? Is Shakespeare's portrayal of Lady Macbeth simply about a particular Scottish noblewoman who lived in the later part of the 11th century? Hardly. What these writers have done is to illustrate significant common human attributes by the way they have written about particular individuals. Artistic approaches to research try to locate the general in the particular. They attempt to shed light on what is unique in time and space, while at the same time conveying insights that exceed the limits of the situation in which they emerge. This is precisely what Aristotle meant when he said that poetry was truer than history. Put into more contemporary psychological terms, the expectations we acquire from our examination of the particular become a part of our anticipatory schema. Oh, that's a good point. It goes to my video, Reasonable Expectations. We shape our information pickup system by what we learn from individual cases. The artistically oriented researcher is interested in making the particular vivid so that its qualities can be experienced, and because they believe that the particular has a contribution to make to the comprehension of what is general. The ability to generalize from particulars is one of the ways whereby humans cope with the world. I know of no one who forms the generalizations that guide his or her actions through a technically rigorous process of random selection. Okay. Oh man, this is so good. Oh, this is so good. I really want to keep reading. Like, I want to stop because this podcast has been way too long. But this is like super interesting. Okay, there's 5 more points. We're not going to read them, though. We'll read one more. And then we'll stop. Okay. Or we'll do 1 or 2 more things before we stop. Okay, last one we'll read from this. Again, I said the name at the beginning, but you can check it out. On the Differences Between Scientific and Artistic Approaches to Qualitative Research by Elliot W. Eisner. I don't know. It's from 1981. I don't know anything about the author. If Elliot Eisner is like, you know, a Nazi or something, I'm sorry. This is a good paper. I just found it. Okay. I'm sure Elliot's not a Nazi, by the way. Okay. Number 5, the role of form. In the sciences, the manner in which data are presented is interchangeable. For example, one can use numbers to display a pattern of scores which a population received, or one can use a bar chart. The two methods are regarded as equivalent. Indeed, if one form designed to replicate the information provided in the other fails to do so, an error has occurred. The matter of form in scientific work goes even farther. If the articles published in research journals are examined for style, it becomes quite apparent that the standardization of style is considered a virtue. One is supposed to identify the problem, review the literature, describe the instruments and population, report the treatment, present and discuss the results, and finally project possible implications. If in this format any sense of the personality of the investigator shines through, it is to be neutralized. This is accomplished by requiring that writers use the third person singular or the first person plural instead of using the I form. The people studied are referred to as subjects or as S's, and whatever uniqueness particular individuals might have are to be disregarded. Not all research in the social sciences emphasizes so strict a formula as I have just described. Nevertheless, this is the dominant tradition in which social science research participates. The date an editor receives a manuscript is sometimes published with the manuscript, this being a clear indication of the effort editors of social science journals make to emulate their colleagues in the physical sciences, where who discovered what first counts a great deal. In artistic approaches to research, standardization of that's a really interesting detail that they publish the date received of the paper. In artistic approaches to research, standardization of form is counterproductive. What artistic approaches seek is to exploit the power of form to inform. What those engaged in artistic work take as a given is the belief that form and content interact. Interesting. So content creation, it doesn't involve form, and that's part of art. It's just the content, not the form of the content. Form creation. I'm a form creator. I'm not a content creator. I'm a form creator. The opposite view is salient in scientific. The opposite view, what? What those engaged in artistic work take as a given is the belief that form and content interact. Some would say that form is content. Oh, yes. The opposite view is salient in scientifically oriented work. Standardization of form is sought so that it does not confound the content. Because of its rule-governed syntax, the same things can be said in several ways. Rules of equivalence are comparatively easy to apply. In artistic approaches, the particular words chosen, the location of specific ideas within a report, the tone and tempo of the writing, the sense of voice which it possesses have no literal equivalent. The potential of form is not regarded as a liability, but as an essential vehicle constituting a significant part of the content of the communication. In short, form is regarded as part of the content of what is expressed and bears significantly on the kinds of meanings people are likely to secure from the work. Hence, being skilled at the making of artistically expressive forms, being able to write, is a critically important skill for those doing artistically oriented research in education. Wow. I literally can't stop. Number 6, degree of license allowed. Perhaps one of the most generally held beliefs about the differences between science and art is that the former deals with fact while the latter deals with fiction. The former is regarded as objective, the latter as subjective. Putting aside the point that scientific work is an artifact, that it is a human construction subject to all the human vicissitudes and foibles, there is a correct sense to the expectation that what is said in the name of science is to be more factual, less subject to imaginative fancy than, say, what is to be said by those who work within an artistic mode. We expect inventiveness and personal interpretation in the arts. We expect the artist to take liberties in order to drive home the point they wish to make. These liberties, what we refer to as artistic license, are not intended to distract from artistic validity, but to render more incisively and more persuasively what has been learned. Does such bias have a place in artistic approaches to research? Are the straight facts, unencumbered by modulation, more truthful? Is the long-standing expectation for pristine objectivity, even if such an aspiration were possible to achieve, which I think it is not, the most noble ideal for educational research? One of the strengths that artistically oriented research possesses is that liberties in portrayal are wider than they are in scientifically oriented studies. Making things vivid through selective reporting and special emphasis occurs inevitably in any form of reporting, including scientific reporting. Artistically oriented research acknowledges what already exists and instead of presenting a facade of objectivity, exploits the potential of selectivity and emphasis to say what needs saying as the investigator sees it. That reminds me of my Animal Collective video where I was like, this is not the definitive view of Animal Collective. This is just my take on it. Indeed, this orientation to writing has developed to such a degree of sophistication among the new journalists that a neologism has been created to designate the new genre. It's called faction, the marriage of fact and fiction. I regard this term as extremely illuminating. After all, what can be more biased than emotionally eviscerated fact? After all, what can be more biased than emotionally eviscerated fact describing conditions or situations that are emotionally significant to those in the situations being described? What could be more biased than a newspaper reporting like a bullet that came from a police officer's gun landed in a person who subsequently passed away? Distortion can result not only from what is put in, but also from what is left out. Yeah, that's very true. All right, we're done. There's a few more points. I don't want to spoil it. This is paper from 1981. I think a lot of people will enjoy reading it. And that was great. That was extremely illuminating and enlightening. And I'm very glad we did that for all this talk about art. Well, the last thing we'll talk about is I was talking about how I hate the Mavericks for, getting Kyrie Irving, and I dislike Kyrie Irving for being a, reactionary anti-Semite. And I was preying on his downfall and the Mavericks, and they didn't make the playoffs. So, yeah, my pros came true. They actually just got fined $750,000 for intentionally losing the last game of the season so that they would get the 10th lottery pick, which they needed to trade to the Knicks as part of a deal that's already happened, I think is the way it went down. Point is, they intentionally lost the last game. Teams do it all the time. Mavericks have done it before many times, I think, for strategic reasons. It's extremely rude to the fans. And I feel like, seriously, can you imagine being a Mavericks fan? They draft an anti-Semite. You're like, oh man, they have Luka Doncic. Like, my fucking team is the best they've ever been, or like since fucking Dirk Nowitzki, or I don't know. I'm not like an NBA head. People must have been so happy, and then they now have this anti-Semite. They're playing terribly, and they're intentionally losing the last game where they could have won it and made it to the. They could have made it to the playoffs. They could have made it to the playoffs if they won the game. So, my understanding is they would have made the 10th spot. They would have taken Oklahoma City. Was it Oklahoma City's spot, right? Yeah. Yeah, they would have taken Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah. Or maybe the other spot. I don't remember which spot they would have taken, but... so that's really funny that they didn't make the playoffs and they got fined. So yeah, maybe they shouldn't have, picked an anti-Semite to be on their team. So, oh shit. I'm already losing now in this final matchup in my fantasy league. There's a lot of games to come, but now I'm down a point. Oh, what is happening? How did that happen already? DJ LeMahieu got a strikeout. Come on, DJ. All right. Well, we'll call it a day. This has been a fantastic podcast. Feel free to write into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you think about everything we talked about. And have a fantastic rest of your day and life. Until I see you next. Should be a podcast episode next week. And this has been an absolute pleasure. Okay, goodbye. This is a podcast or something like that.